You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to our sponsors on Captivate and on Patreon. You can get bonus content of our show on either of those platforms or on Apple Podcasts with a private subscription to the Amazal Ministries Podcast Network.
Exodus 35, verses 10 through 19 in the Christian Standard Bible read, "Let all the skilled artisans among you come and make everything that the Lord has commanded. The tabernacle, its tent and covering, its clasps and supports, its crossbars, its pillars and bases, the ark with its poles, the mercy seat, and the curtain for the screen, the table with its poles, all its utensils, and the bread of the presence, the lampstand for light with its utensils, and lamps as well as the oil for the light, the altar of incense with its poles, the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense, the entryway screen for the entrance to the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering with its bronze grate, its poles and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the hangings of the courtyard, its posts and bases, and the screen for the gate of the courtyard, the tent pegs for the tabernacle, and the tent pegs for the courtyard, along with their ropes, and specifically woven garments for ministering in the sanctuary, the holy garments for the priest Aaron, and the garments for his sons to serve as priests." Here, Moses is having the children of Israel prepare the tabernacle in the way God commanded. We see everyone working together for the crafts, tailoring robes, and decorating the worship area. Even though we are no longer under the laws of Moses as Christians, we believe aesthetics can play an important part of worship still. Why do you believe God had the people of Israel put so much into the decor of their worship area, and what can the church today learn from that?
I think spirituality is symbolism and interacting realized in our soul. What I mean by that, like when you worship, songs usually, we worship in song a lot at church. I think when it connects with your soul, there's this feeling that I think that's what we attribute to spirituality. And I think that's how we relate to God. And we could do it in ways other than song. Often we get away from that, but you see things where people paint, or different times you're in nature, you interact with different forms of beauty, and that connects you to the divine. I think the same thing is true of stuff like the robes and all this. And I think when you put this much into detail, it's easier for everyone to have a part. And part of what it means to be the church is everyone contributing to the act of worship. So I think this allows everyone to contribute and have different points. Not everybody necessarily connects with a song, but maybe they'll connect with a painting. Maybe the robes, some churches have priestly robes of different colors for the seasons. Maybe all of those things put together is what really connects with some people and allows them to relate to God in a way they couldn't otherwise. And I think that's just how God designed us. It's why you see so many different sounds and beautiful things in nature. It's how God designed the world in great detail. So, with that, hey everybody, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast, your favorite church unity podcast, probably. We have different noise going on right now, different music. It's a different intro because we're starting a brand new series. We're just going to do a tiny intro for the series today. We're talking about our Ecumenical Aesthetics series, where we're going to be discussing church art and how the church relates to God and one another through art. It's going to be a fun time. Today, it's just TJ and I. We decided it would be a worthwhile time. We have some questions we're going to ask every guest that's part of this series. We said, hey, let's put ourselves through the ringer first. And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. It's, I lost my tab with the outline on it.
So, as you guys will,
Ministries Podcast Network. Link is below for other shows like us.
Yeah, it's a good time. And now I'm just going to go ahead and jump to one of my favorite things that we do on the show. It's a spiritual practice that I care deeply about, and that is silliness. So TJ, we're going to ask a silly question. I'm going to make you answer first because I know you're going to make me do something else first later on. Quick and simple, what would be the most challenging part of interpreting your favorite book of the Bible into a comic book?
I think definitely not making people angry would be the hardest part.
Okay. I'm just going to leave that be. Yeah. Because that's true of a lot of the favorite books.
Yeah, but like imagery wise, for me specifically.
Is your favorite book Song of Solomon?
No.
Because that would be a hard one.
It's a different comic.
Although, I know a guy who made that comic book. Man, one of my favorites has got to be Hebrews. And I think it's just because it's not really a story or anything. So it would be hard to like put like ideas into comic panels, as it would be like if I were to choose judges, that would be really easy, I feel like. Yeah.
Do you think so?
I mean, comparatively.
I was going to do Revelations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people would get mad that, it was all just a dream. Like, no, it was a prophecy. It's different.
Yeah.
But now
he does wake up several times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the main reasons we're doing this series is because of our belief that beauty can bring people closer to God and to one another. So we have a few questions that we're going to be asking everyone in the series to go along with that belief. Before making our guests do it, we wanted to go through it, warm our listeners up with our experiences. So, Josh, could you tell us a time when you've seen God in the beauty of creation, outside specifically?
Outside's easier. We go to this place called Cumberland Island a few times a year. The first time I went, I was able to run on the beach alongside some wild horses, and there's no buildings really. It's just nature. It kind of looks like Jurassic Park on an island, which I guess is just Jurassic Park. You don't usually see the beach part. But yeah, it was really cool. So I think that was a moment that, after doing that, just thinking about how beautiful God's creation is and kind of getting detached from all of what humans do to muck it up really, connected with me. Which is why I keep going back. What about you, TJ?
I'm inclined to agree. If that's cheating,
that's fair.
Cumberland Island's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. So would you share a moment with us, if you have one, when you felt a special connection to a painting, sculpture, or anything like that? It doesn't have to be religious.
So it comes and goes. None that like stick to me, like stick on me, like I'll remember it forever. None like that, but I'll definitely get one every once in a while when I see something new and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Tear up a little bit, read about it on Wikipedia for 15 to 20 minutes and then forget about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, there was an art exhibit of like student art when I was at UNCW that you could just walk in whenever. And I'd go in there, and a lot of times there would just be something there that I would connect with, but it wasn't really anything specific. So, if that counts. Most of Van Gogh's stuff, and this is silly, but I got into Van Gogh because of Doctor Who. But then the more I see his other art, like the pieces, I'm like, oh no, I actually really connect with what he does for some reason.
It's also a really good episode.
Yeah, it is.
And like really good depiction of Van Gogh.
Yeah, it was also depressing. Which every depiction of Van Gogh is a little depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has been shown in several different studies that there is a healing aspect to seeing beauty. Do you believe, TJ, there's a reason why God might have wired us this way?
So I'm not familiar with the study. Sounds pretty interesting. You should send that to me. But I don't claim to know the reason God does things.
Yeah.
He just wanted us to see beautiful things.
That's fair. Yeah. I think that God's desire to connect with us, and I don't think God created anything that he wasn't proud of, So I think naturally seeing what God created and just being around the things of God, which I think creation is, that just makes sense that it would be healing. I don't know what his reason was in it, but it does kind of just make intuitive sense to me.
Yeah. So before we get to the more unique aspects of this episode, we have another segment we're going to be doing every time for the Ecumenical Aesthetics series, and it's called the Artist's Corner. I have a few questions to select from here that I'm going to do in a random order, and for the intro episode, we're both going to answer. We probably won't get to all of them, but we have 7 minutes to discuss whatever I want here. So, Josh, would you prefer hymns or modern worship music?
I'm going to go with hymns. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, it would have been different, because there was some modern worship music that they put a lot of thought into, but I feel like more recently, modern worship music is a lot less thoughtful.
Yeah. Extra contemporary?
Hymns, yeah, extra contemporary. I don't love it. But some of like older hymns, especially if you get to like some of the ones that like the Wesleyan brothers wrote and stuff, it's almost more of a textbook than a song. I'm like, oh, this is like extremely well thought out. Wild stuff.
Yeah.
What about you?
I feel the same way. I never really liked modern worship music that much, but it depends on how you define modern. Like I said, if you take it as far back as like 1930, which I feel like is fair to do, kind of broadens things up a little bit. But I do prefer hymns. I feel like there's a lot of power in old hymns. They're constructed, and we could do like a little mini series on the way hymns are constructed and written musically.
We should,
but they're very strong.
Yeah. Honestly, I just like how most music used to be written.
Yeah.
rare that like modern music is written well, I feel like. Although there have been some like more of your like indie rock or like folk singers have written some stuff. And I'm like, oh, I like how that was done.
Yeah. Rent Collective.
Yeah, Rend Collective. Getting outside of Christian stuff, but like obviously, I love a lot of Passenger stuff is like written where like the words match the kind of beat, like the music has its own meaning separate from the lyrics, and I always like that. Mumford and Sons, their version of Babel, I think really sheds a lot of light on like what Babylon actually means in the Bible, even though they're not a Christian band. They did that really well. Also, I got to say, Greta Van Fleet's newest album, there are a few songs that I'm like, okay, no, that was done pretty good.
Yeah. So, if your favorite Bible passage were a painting, what would it look like?
I think it would be very abstract. And in my head, there's a lot of greens, but like bluish greens, not like bright greens. Because my favorite Bible passage is Galatians 5:1. It is for freedom he set us free. Therefore, don't, submit yourself again to slavery. And it's about like not being a slave to the law or to sin. So the freedom vibes, for some reason, I'm imagining it as like a blue-green, which isn't very American to me. I guess if I were to be really American, red, white, and blue. I don't know. For me, freedom in that kind of context, I'm seeing it as like a blue-green abstract piece.
Yeah. For you, freedom is nature.
Yeah, I think so. What about you? What's your favorite verse? And what would it look like?
Luke 22:36.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I knew that. I just needed you to tell it for them.
Yeah. Well, so it's hard to vocalize what a painting would look like to me. That's one of the many reasons I'm against AI art, partially because, you know what? It seems kind of hard for me personally, because I don't know what I want it to look like. But if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It's dramatic, it's intense, and you can see clearly that he is giving up some semblance of safety to protect himself in a different way.
Yeah. I like that.
That's hard. It's really hard.
It's true.
So, do you want to do all of these?
No, just whichever ones. This is TJ's corner, really. TJ is the artist.
Mm-hmm. So if you do want to hear the rest, you're going to have to listen to the series. We will cover them all eventually with different people. I'm not going to do them all for everybody, probably, unless they make a really compelling case.
And answer really quickly somehow.
Really quickly, yeah. They only have 7 minutes. We're not going to take the whole 7 because we are short on time.
Yeah. Speaking of the rest of the series, if you're wondering, it's going to be an 8-part series. And I'll just go over in order. We're going to be talking to Elizabeth Penglingen and Taylor Clyde next. We'll be talking about worship painting, if you ever see people paint during worship service. And we'll talk about worship in song. Taylor used to be a worship leader, still does a lot of worship stuff. Then we're going to have Nathan Gilmore on to talk about iconoclasm. He used to be a religion professor, so he's very in touch with what it is this whole idea of icons and imagery is bad, and that's a lot of the church kind of believes that way. Then we're going to have Pastor Will and Reverend Keno on. You guys should know all them. Great guys, and we're just going to talk about some of our favorite icons in the church, what we like as far as imagery goes. Then we'll have Dr. Link, Dr. Beck, and Brother J.R. Martin on to talk about imagery as it's used in the Bible and church flags, so it'll be fun. Pastor Shayna Watson's going to join us, talk about the Anglican Church and the art that they use. Father Jonathan will be back on to talk about the art of the Greek Orthodox Church, which is a lot. Joe Day will be back. We're going to talk some about art as he's perceived it being in and out of the home church. And then we'll finish the series with Professor Chris Moreland of the Catholic tradition, because he's going to, there's a lot of questions people have about how the Catholics use art, especially around statues. So we're going to discuss that with him. It'll be a fun time. Now, our final question for this series, rather than asking for practical actions for church unity, what we're going to do, we're going to ask, outside of paintings or statues, what is one kind of art you think people would get into that might help us draw closer to God and one another?
So I think you could say a lot of different types of art for this, and I'm going to go with a painting style. But for pretty much everything, there's a specific lesson you have to be willing to take from the art style itself. At least that's what I think. And I'm going to go with pointillism. And if you're not familiar with it by name, then you'll probably know the painting of that park scene where, it's a ton of people at a lake. There's some trees, a bunch of people, maybe in a carriage, balloons. That is just tons and tons of tiny little dots of pure color. No brushstrokes. That's pointillism. But I think the lesson we can take from that is that God is in the little things. The little things form his big picture. Basically.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Also, TJ forced me to make part of this logo for the series and pointillized. So,
I did. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So you guys could check that out. He didn't force me. He just suggested it, and it looked better. So It trumped my version.
I would have forced him if it had come to it.
I'm going to go with culinary arts. I think for me, you want to talk about connecting with somebody else, learning about the food that their culture partakes in, or, I feel like there's just a special connection to someone's culture when you experience the food of that culture, if that makes sense. I think if I'm talking to somebody who's not American at all, I have friends that were just from other countries and they're like, hey, make me some biscuits and gravy. There's something about that moment of someone's first biscuit and gravy that they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I grew up with. This is me in a way. Like something about our food is personal to us and part of our identity, I think. So I think being able to do that really helps you connect well with other cultures whenever you're willing to experience other foods. And it really is an art, whenever you go to like Epcot and you see some of the presentations of the food and like how the colors contrast and stuff, like it's very symbolic and it's something you can partake in. And I just like eating. So naturally I was going to say that. Yeah.
So what would be the repercussions in the world around us if everyone stopped to take the time to appreciate sharing each other's culture and God's in the little things? You have to explain.
I'll answer mine. You answer yours. I think that's fair.
No.
I think if everybody partook of other foods and saw culinary experience as something worthwhile to appreciate, not just, consume, I think you'd understand one another better, really. And I feel like it would just help us open up more. It's really hard to have good food from another culture that you haven't experienced and not let your guard down a little bit. Because you're always like, wow, that was awesome. That tasted like, like it can't not be a conversation starter, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
what about you? What about yours?
I think people would be generally a lot less stressed naturally, unless your body is making you be stressed and you can't do anything to stop it. That's different. But
that's fair.
People would generally be happier, I think, more content with what is happening.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, this stays the same. We're going to do our God moment. We ask everyone to share a moment where they saw God in recently, whether that be a blessing, challenge, curse, moment of worship, anything that you saw God in. So, Joshua, do you have a God moment for us?
Yeah. I gave blood. Somehow that put me in a raffle. Got an Amazon gift card, and I got this new shower head with it. And it's like one of those like rainfall shower heads. It's just been like a tiny blessing that somehow just makes my whole day better, even though I just use it for like 10 minutes a day, but it's nice.
Yeah, that does sound nice. No, so me personally, my God moment, last week I had 4 days off from work, which was amazing.
That is
great.
Crazy, actually.
Yeah. I used vacation time, but
worth it.
I did it because my friend Josh, not this one, different Josh, came to visit from Virginia, and we got to spend a few days together for the first time in a long time. So it was great. You want to hang out with these people, my brothers in Christ that I do not get to see very often. It was really great. I can't overstate how much, God is in those moments at all times, getting him here safe and back safe.
Did y'all have any good culinary experiences together?
Not this time. One time we made Spam fries.
That counts.
Yeah. So please share this with a friend, enemy, cousin. We like that one. Share it with a cousin. Everybody's somebody's cousin, hopefully. And chat with us on our Discord server. It is in the notes. We would love to talk to you. We'd love to speak to you, Feel kind of secluded out here all on our own without that extra interaction. So
yeah, friends are nice. We're lonely.
Yeah, we're so very lonely without you.
Yeah, please help a brother out. No, check out all of our other shows on the Anazal Ministries Podcast Network. I do a few over there. TJ's about to start one. Christian, Brandon, Sis Mike Geekology is there. All good stuff. Worth checking out. In the show notes, we have the link. Just, give it a little click.
Yeah. And hope you enjoyed the show. Come back next week when we'll be continuing our Ecumenical Aesthetics series with Elizabeth Fang and Taylor Clyde to discuss worship painting and worship in music. After that, we'll have Dr. Nathan Gilmore on discussing iconoclasm and the dangers of idol worship. After that, we'll be joined by Pastor Will Rose and Reverend Keno Kennedy to discuss our favorite iconography and other church art from various traditions. And finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be joining us.
Yeah, but he's not aware yet, so someone's got to tell him.
Someone has to tell him.
Yeah, please.
Please.
Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. Again, you could always sponsor our show at patreon.com/the Whole Church Podcast or on captivate.fm or on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave us a one-time tip through Captivate. Thank you for listening.